Welcome back, everyone. We appreciate you staying with us this morning. Great to have you along on this Tuesday, wherever you might be coming from. My name is Scott Murray, and we continue on with our America's Future Series International Cybersecurity Innovation Summit. We've got some wonderful guests thus far, and we've got lots more coming up during the course of the day. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to a gentleman that has been a part of this for some time, and we're always delighted to welcome him back. He's one of our hosts today, kind of the host, I guess, as far as I'm concerned, the Lieutenant General, Harry Raduege. Welcome back, my friend. It's all yours.
Great. Scott, thank you very much again for welcoming me back. It's been wonderful already today with the presentations that we've had. And today I'm pleased to team with Brandon Green, who is with the National Security Innovation Network, one of our sponsors. And at the Ensign, Brandon serves as the Rocky Mountain Regional Director. And prior to Ensign, Brandon worked at the Air Force Cyber Works as the Director of Training and Education and the Assistant Professor of Technology Innovation Management at the United States Air Force Academy. At this point, I'd like to introduce Brandon, who is going to say a few words about General Shea's background. Over to you, Brandon.
Hey, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. And the opportunity, really looking forward to the panel that's coming forward. So the moderator for the roundtable that's coming up is Lieutenant General retired Bob Shea. Most recently served as the Executive Vice President, Strategic Solutions for Smartronix. He's also the director on 2 corporate boards, an executive partner with a private equity corporation, and an advisor to several telecommunication and defense corporations. Prior to leaving active duty, General Shea served as the Director, Command, Control, Communications, and Computer Systems for the Joint Staff. He was the principal advisor to the Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff on all C4 system matters within the DoD. General Shea earned his master's degree from Central Michigan University and is a graduate of multiple DoD schools. In addition, he has commanded 6 times at numerous levels, including deployed commands supporting Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Really excited again for the chance to hear from General Shea as well as our other members on the roundtable.
Well, Brandon, before you toss it over to General Shea, on a personal note, let me just say that I've worked with Bob Shea on active duty in industry and with the Armed Forces Communications Electronics Association, or AFCEA International, for many years. And let me just say, he's a great patriot, a great Marine, and a great friend. And today, I'm really looking forward to the roundtable discussion that General Shea will moderate. Brandon, take it from here.
Yeah, so next I'd like to, I guess, just introduce General Shea to come on for a little bit and be able to engage with us a little bit before the table begins. But with that, just kind of in the ensign capacity, really looking forward to engaging with multiple members on the panel today. So Spacecom, Joint Staff, ACC. I'm happy to say that we've done a lot of work with several of these organizations already, and just looking really to increase the number of DoD problems and the airmen and sailors that we can work with in these capacities to solve their problems. And as Morgan said earlier in the event, we're really looking at finding the way that we can change the way the DoD solves problems. Again, really just looking at hearing from the participants today and figure out what some of those problems are that we can help assist with moving down the line. Thanks.
Okay, Brandon, thank you. I'll take it from there. I appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction. But my team in Fairfax would never forgive me if I didn't say that I am currently serving, and for the last 6.5 years, serving as the president and CEO of the AFCEA International. So if I don't do that, I can never go back to my office again. But anyway, thank you very much for that introduction. Can you all hear me out there? Okay. This cyber and space is really a large issue. And if you really started to decompose what it comprised of, just at a very high level, I'm going to throw out just a few of the areas. The RF spectrum, position, navigation, and timing, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance information, all fits into there. Ground stations and telemetry. The technologies such as cloud, artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, just to name a few. The networks that support the whole infrastructure, the supply chain to include the vulnerabilities, as well as the production and the raw materials that are out there. Cyber touches all areas from space vehicles to the rockets to the user devices, as I said, supply chain. It includes the lasers, the sensors, the integration efforts, the launch systems, the human talent and the talent development that goes into this. So it really covers a broad spectrum of capabilities that need to be addressed. There's not enough time to do justice to all the topics that need addressing, and there's not enough time to really get deeply into the topics that will be discussed, but that demonstrates the complexity of the challenge that we as a nation and our coalition partners face, and the fact that we still have a long way to go to develop the necessary solutions. Unfortunately, time isn't something that we have a lot of. But what we do need is strong, positive, and decisive leaders. And that's what we've got represented by these panel members today. There's an inextricable relationship between cyber and space. Space and cyber in the contested environment will make take on an enormous importance across all functions of national security. Most of us are familiar with the elements of this contested area that are visible, but there are other areas such as radio frequency spectrum that are shared in our areas which are potentially vulnerable to adversaries if not properly managed. So no doubt there's an expanding threat surface in both cyber and space domains. We can't get too deeply into that here, but the supply chain immediately comes to mind, as well as the critical infrastructure and human capital, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. Space and cyber are the intersection of strategic, operational, and tactical operations. That's why they are so vitally important to what we do from a national security perspective. Inextricably tied to these efforts are our information networks. Unfortunately, from my perspective, and this is only my perspective, we're not in a good position to fight the next fight on the network that we have against a peer or near peer competitor. In looking to the future, there are several operational concepts floating around that to me haven't demonstrated a thorough understanding of the impact of space, the complexity of space and or cyber, the technical challenges and the codependencies that come with both those areas. In addition, you have to wonder where the stable funding streams are that will come to help develop the critical capabilities that we need. So as I said before, time is not an ally as we march through this. We have to accelerate the pace. A bureaucracy left to its own devices will choose failure over progress, and we've got to find a way to beat that down. And speaking of that, the question I often find myself asking myself primarily is, would the nation be better served with a model such as the Naval Reactors Program, which served as a lead agency for the nuclear program in this country? Would we be better served by having an agency such as that does the engineering, the network design, the integration, a single entity that could be reached out, that we could reach out to help us build the infrastructure we need for the future? A place where the best and the brightest can focus on the challenges at hand. I think we all know the reputation our nuclear program has for safety, for thoughtfulness, for design, and good engineering and integration. And I think maybe that's something we ought to be looking at going forward. But the bottom line is the world is changing. Ask yourself, what is the impact of globalization on industry and government relations? Where's the allegiance of multinational global corporations lie? Is it national security, stakeholders, open and free trade? What are the nuances and the implications of those decisions that come with those nuances? And there's a need, as I said before earlier, for strong leadership in cyberspace as an integrated effort between industry, government, and academia. We need leadership of the stature of George Marshall reporting directly to the president. Talent, agility, speed, automation, and commitment are critical for us in both space and in the cyber world. And with those opening thoughts and my understanding of the criticality of cyber and space, let me introduce our discussion panel members. We got a great team for you today. I mean, absolutely great. Mr. Ron Pontius is the Deputy of the Commanding General, United States Army Cyber Command. In that position, he manages and provides strategic direction to all aspects of Army Cyber Command, to include planning, coordinating, synchronizing, supervising the command's effort for the conduct of full spectrum operations. He served previously as the Director of Command and Control and ISR for the Deputy Secretary of Defense for Acquisition Technology and Logistics. And prior to that, he had a distinguished and distinctive career in operations and acquisition inside the Army. General Paul Fredenburgh is currently serving as the Deputy Commander of the Joint Task Force Headquarters Department of Defense Information Network, leading that command in operations and defensive cyberspace operations, internal defensive measures, and synchronizing defense and intelligence sharing in order to deter adversary effects. Paul previously served as the Director of Command Control Communications and Cyber at the United States Indo-Pacific Command. And prior to that, he was the Commandant at the Eisenhower School for National Security under the National Defense University. Brigadier Chad Raduege is the Director of Cyberspace Information Dominance and the Chief Information Officer of the Air Force Combat Command, of the Air Combat Command. He's responsible for delivering strategic and enterprise level cyberspace efforts to increase Air Force ability to provide combat forces to the combatant commanders. He's responsible to organize, train, and equip cyberspace capability and communications for the command's 34 wings, 700 aircraft, and 19 bases worldwide and worldwide operating locations. He's commanded 8 times through the group agency level. He's previously was the commander of the White House Communications Agency, providing support to the President, the Vice President, and National Security Council staff, the Secret Service, and the White House military officer. And last but not least is Brigadier General J. Matos. He's the J6 for the United States Pacific Space Command. He's responsible for planning, coordinating, and synchronizing of the operational and technical direction of C4 cyber efforts for U.S. Space Command mission networks, national leader command capability, space surveillance, ballistic missile defense, position navigation and timing networks, in support of all national level objectives. Prior to that, General Matos served as the Marine Forces Pacific Director of Information Environment Operations, where he was responsible for providing strategic analysis, planning, and mission coordination for cyber, information technology, space, military deception, messaging, and information operations for the Marine Corps across the Western United States and the Indo-Pacific region. And previous to that, he was served as the commander of the Defense Information Systems Agency, Pacific, and was responsible for planning, coordinating, and directing the implementation of an enterprise operations and cyber defense efforts for the entire Pacific region. He was also responsible for the day-to-day management, all the networks supporting the combatant commander out there. And he too, as do all of them, has extensive joint and operational time. So I want to thank these gentlemen for joining us here today. And to kick this thing off, I'm going to throw out a couple questions I just kind of like to discuss and get their thoughts are. And so the first one is, when you think of cyber threats in space, what do you typically think about in operational terms and defense of those capabilities? General Matos, you want to take that one on first, please?
Yes, sir. Hey, thank you. And thank you to everyone, General Shea and General Raduege and the rest of the American Futures. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Great privilege. And to my fellow panelists, again, I know all of them from previous experience. So it's, again, good to see you all again. I look forward to the discussion today. I think when you talk about the cyber threats in space, it's not just to on-orbit activities, it's also the terrestrial aspects. I think our adversaries are very aware of our capabilities and our reliance upon space capabilities to support the joint force in all phases of operations. And they're going to come after us hard and they're going to come after us fast to take that capability away from us. So obviously we need to be, protecting ourselves not just in phase 0 day-to-day operations such as today, but also if we go into the competition phases. And you look at the two pieces I think you look at are the on-orbit, but also the terrestrial. In the on-orbit, there are obviously a lot of space assets up there in LEO, MEO, and GEO. The geosynchronous orbits provide the communications, and the low Earth orbits. But once those satellite capabilities go up, there's kind of limited capacity and capability to protect those systems. We can't really update the crypto. We can't do some of the work that needs, some of the typical stuff that we do or activities that we do on the ground and on the terrestrial side really becomes a little more challenging up in space, simply because the ability to reach out and touch them, and some of the capabilities are just very difficult to change. I think where we have a bigger opportunity and a bigger risk, but also a bigger opportunity, is to protect our terrestrial infrastructure. Space Command is very reliant upon the terrestrial infrastructure that spreads across the globe to support our operations. From the DODNOPS piece of it, when you talk about the transoceanic trunks that support our operations, the DISA-POPs, the connectivity nodes that we have spread throughout the world are kind of a critical vulnerability to us, not only from a physical sense, but also from a cyber sense. If an adversary can get inside those links or in those facilities, they can do a tremendous amount of damage and really shut down our ability to use those assets. So we need to protect those capabilities from the outset. I think we've done as we stand up Space Command, again, we're about 18 months old, working on 2 years. Later this year will be 2 years, and then standing up United States Space Force just stood up about 6 months after we did. We're working hand in hand with them because we really do rely upon the Space Force to provide some of that the cyber defense capabilities to protect the assets that we rely upon, that General Dickinson as the commander will rely upon and utilize in time of crisis to support the joint force. I think Space Force has done a tremendous job with creating of Delta 6, which has the cyber defense capabilities for the Space Force, the mission defense teams they're placing across the space enterprise to protect the assets that we have on the ground, and the other services as well. Marforce Space has stood up, and NavSpace have both stood up within the last year to support operations. But what's key with that is Marforce Space and NavSpace are also tied into the cyber component of those various services. Marforce Space is also dual-hatted as Marforce Cyber, and NavSpace also has the 10th Fleet hat. So as they bring those capabilities in there, I think it's as General Shea mentioned earlier, you really do see that nexus between cyber and space. And the Army is bringing a tremendous amount of resources they have down there, both in Georgia, but also they have Space Missile Defense Command here, a component to us. So again, strong requirements, huge requirements on our part for cyber defense capabilities, but I think all the services are bringing a bit of that to bear to defend that. And also we look to industry now to help support us and identify the weaknesses and shortfalls, to address those in the supply chain aspect before they field those systems to us and hand them over to us, working with our industry partners to make sure they're as secure as possible before they're handed over to us. So with that, sir, I'd like to hand it back over to you.
Okay, so General Chad Raduege, as a guy who's got to deploy forces and get them out the door and sustain them and keep them going, what are your thoughts when it comes to how do you deal with this, those cyber threats as they affect space, particularly as you're deploying to remote locations in many cases?
Well, thank you, General Shea. It's always great to get an introduction from you, distinguished gentleman that has been around for a number of years and been part of my life for a number of years. So thanks for the opportunity to come together. To the America's Future series, this is a fantastic run of the discussions that you're bringing together with a distinguished group. I look at the count of the number of people that are on, and just very appreciative of the opportunity to come together. And then I look across this panel of distinguished peers and friends, and just appreciate the opportunity to come together and have a discussion with them. Thought my good friend Jay Matos did a fantastic job of laying out the challenges that he's dealing with on a daily basis as part of Space Command, and thinking about those challenges both in space and terrestrial. We have come to recognize that the challenges are not just there, but also in the networks that we have built, and the fragility associated with those, the infrastructure that is aging on a daily basis, the resiliency that is perhaps not in place the way that we would like it to be. And so as you asked the question about how do we think about the future environment and the ability for our joint forces to really deploy forward and extend capabilities, extend the network, and extend the opportunity to leverage space, that becomes a challenge for all of us. And so as was alluded to and discussed, our mission defense teams, I think, are a highlight for us. And so the work that has taken place at Buckley Garrison and Schriever Air Force Base, I think soon to be Schriever Garrison, the work that our Delta 6 has been doing to lay in those embedded teams that we call mission defense teams associated with the space weapon systems, and really establishing a day-to-day relationship with our operators. So understanding what our operators are doing, understanding the challenges that our maintainers are having. Some of that could be on the things that were alluded to, the crypto and the updates, just maintaining the aging infrastructure and the fragility of those networks. So understanding and engaging with those partners on a day-to-day basis, really in the skin of our weapon systems, looking at the code level, and having dedicated cybersecurity experts that are focused on the mission at hand. And so those mission defense teams are envisioned to be not only co-located with our weapon systems, but in the event that we have tactical packages that are deploying forward, or linking up space assets with our front end tactical edge operations, and making sure that we have the connectivity in there. Our mission defense teams are going to envision that. Likewise, we're standing up a very robust command and control structure, because it all comes down to the ability to rally around an identified problem or vulnerability, but then share that information across the enterprise, whether it's in garrison or at the tactical edge, and making sure that we have very good C2 flows. And so, as was alluded to, we have stood up what we call a cyber defense correlation cell focused on the space network itself. Again, headquartered in Colorado Springs. That organization, run by our Delta 6, is testing those command and control lines on a daily basis. Some of those command and control lines will go beyond just the space systems themselves, but then how do we get that broader reporting in and through Cyber Command? And so some of those C2 nodes are testing that right now to make sure that we're flowing the identified vulnerabilities to the appropriate folks that they can rally around, and again, take a look at the entire DoD enterprise and the entire space enterprise, and making sure that we're getting after those problems. So there's a lot to unpack there. And General Shea, as you alluded to at the beginning, this is a very complex problem. There is a lot to think about in a number of different avenues, but I think we're beginning to identify the urgency and getting after a lot of those things. So with that, I'll offer those thoughts.
Yeah, I got to make a comment on the complexity. When I was on the Joint Staff, I had a discussion with the deputy to one of the service chiefs. He was a 4-star, I was a 3-star, and he said, surely this cannot be as complex as building a nuclear aircraft carrier, as I was trying to get more money for the program. And we debated it back and forth. Bottom line is we got a little money, not a lot of money. 2 years later, I visited him when he was a combatant commander, and he said, remember that discussion we had? And I said, yes, I do. He said, this is orders of magnitude more complex than building an aircraft carrier. So I thought that was kind of an interesting comment coming from someone who just didn't appreciate it, the complexity at one time. So, we talk about resilience in space as well as in resilience in the cyber world. I'd like to ask Ron Pontius, what does resilience mean to the Army?
Yeah, thank you, General Shea. And again, really appreciate being part of this distinguished panel with America First Series. This discussion is very important about sharing across the community, industry, academia, and across the rest of the government. So appreciate being part of this. So in many ways, resilience, let me first start with the critical linkage I think that exists between cyberspace domain and space domain. Again, 2 of the 5 domains as we have designated in the Department of Defense. They really, in so many ways, what Jay talked about, getting at, the critical nature of securing and defending, so we have the operational capability with our space assets. And then what Chad talked about is, the further the defense of that. But from the nature from the Army point of view, extending beyond line of sight for terrestrial communications, or having better situational understanding of our networks. Those are things that support DOTAN operations, or increased navigational and targeting to deliver lethal effects as part of large-scale ground operations. Those are incredibly important. Or then when you talk about the more with our cyber mission force, the offensive and defensive capabilities, that there is key capability that is delivered through the space domain to support cyberspace operations. So coming at it first from that operational point of view, but from a resilience point of view, I think what Jay and Chad both talked about, it's true. We are very dependent on so many things we do is dependent upon having a capable, effective, resilient space layer, space domain, and the assets. And so, as Jay talked about, the Army Space and Missile Defense Command is an absolute key component of U.S. Space Command, and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis for the space control. But then as we work at what are those additional teams, the specialized cyber defense teams that are focused on the space, as well as the larger teams. But the resilience of the space layer is incredibly important to the Army.
Okay. General Fredenburgh, you guys got a lot of responsibility trying to provide that defense across the enterprise. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you face, and how does this idea of resilience fall into what your responsibilities are?
Hey, thank you, sir. And just to open up here, it's a great honor for me to be here participating with all the distinguished panel members here. It's great to see you all. And to our hosts here in America's Future Series, what a great way to have a critically important conversation with the right people, reaching out to our teammates in the commercial sector, in the academia, those businesses, the defense industrial base, and tying in, allies and partners. I think this is just a fantastic venue to have this conversation, and I greatly appreciate being asked to participate here. And sir, to get back to your question, I will tell you, I'd like to offer, as I was thinking through, what we should kind of get across here. This idea of resilience, I think, is important. I think it's absolutely critical, especially in the space and in the cyberspace domains, because they're so dynamic and they move, ebb and flow continuously. In especially in cyber, in a man-made domain, constantly changing. And so I would offer a way to look at resilience not as an idea, but as a posture and a goal to achieve. And I think it has several aspects to it. I think we usually kind of looked at resilience in the terms of, hey, we have some alternate means, you know what I mean, to get the message through. And that was kind of our idea of resilience. But I would anticipate that resilience starts with anticipating what might go wrong, or what the threat might be, and then identifying those threats, and then taking actions to prevent, taking actions to operate through, to recover from, and to adapt to any adverse cyber, enabled condition that could threaten the DOD. So there's a continuum of this resiliency from proactive to reactive that I think all has to come together. Now getting back to what Joint Force Headquarters does, Joint Force Headquarters DOD does under Cyber Command. Really, this is not an administrative effort. Cyberspace, our DODN, is not just a service provided network. It's our operational domain in cyberspace. And there's a person identified, a commander identified, that has responsibility to secure, operate, and defend that for the Department of Defense, and that's Cyber Command. We've operationalized this domain like we have the other four that are obviously much more mature, but nonetheless we have. And only the department can really do that and look at this domain through that lens. That's the way we look at all of our other lenses. We've determined that under the old administrative kind of governance and compliance, that we couldn't manage the risk to set the conditions that we needed for the Department of Defense. And so as Cyber Command stood up, Joint Force Headquarters DODN was also stood up, and 6 years old, so maybe a little bit older than Jay's team there, but nonetheless, we're still in our toddler years here. But what we do is we operationalize the spaces to achieve that resilience posture, if you will, is we gain situational understanding of the operational environment. That's critical. In order to see to any domain, you have to understand that domain. You have to understand the pieces and parts of it. You have to understand how it applies to the mission that you're trying to accomplish. And then we apply intelligence here. So this is just not about best practices. This is about what is the adversary doing. There are adversaries out there that would like to impact our department's operations. There's bad people out there in the world that are trying to do bad things, and the Department of Defense is a target. So we apply intelligence to this threat. What are the adversaries' capabilities? What are the adversaries' intent? And what is their level of risk that they're willing to go to achieve those? And then we establish clear C2, and that is responsibilities for the sectors or the areas of operation. Just like we would divide our space up, our terrain in any other environment, we've divided the Department of Defense's cyber terrain up with individuals, commands that are responsible for that terrain, and they have forces and capabilities that they can direct security actions, network operations, and defensive activities in order to achieve what we would say at the end of the day, the higher level of mission assurance across our department. And we conduct continuous risk assessment. So as through that operational command framework that I just mentioned, we conduct continuous operation. We are in a constant state of contact, if you will, with adversaries that are trying to impact DODN operations through the cyber domain. And then we direct actions, activities, and investment to buy down that risk. And so with that kind of as an opening and an overview, sir, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, John Fredenburgh. I apologize to everybody out there. Some seems to be a problem with the video on my end here. I'm probably doing you a favor, but where you don't have to see me. But anyway, we'll continue to work through this. So, we talk about integrated architectures, and we talk about partnerships between industry, government, and academia. What are some of the things that we need to do to improve information sharing and to include best practices between the commercial sector of the government when it comes to cybersecurity in space, so that, you know, we really are taking a holistic approach and we're not losing anything. I'll throw that out to Chad.
Yeah, thanks for the question, sir. I think you know, as I've been following the America Future series, you know, I recently heard a discussion led by Aaron Miller and the work that they're doing at the ISAC. I think this is a perfect example of a best practice that's building upon those relationships. You know, how do you come together with government, with industry, with academia, to identify, you know, the best of breed, to identify the right experts and right players, and get them all together in a collaborative environment. It is all about partnerships. It is all about collaboration. And I think our Space ISAC is a perfect example of somebody that's out in front. On the broader side of things, we're starting to see a number of things, especially in the Department of the Air Force, where we're looking for opportunities to better partner with our industry and academia. And so a couple of examples. We're working with DISA, with DoD CIO, right now on an effort that we call ITAS, Enterprise IT as a Service. And so this is groundbreaking. It's a paradigm shift for the Department of the Air Force, where we're now saying the as a service model is the right approach. We can no longer, because of the uncertainty of our budgets, as you've alluded to, the aging of our infrastructure and our networks, we have an inability to keep up with the trends that are going on. And so let's rely upon the relationship and the partnership that we have with industry to help us jump forward, to take that next step, to leap forward and build out the future networks that we're trying to do. And so this as a model approach is the one that we're pursuing right now. We're right now what we call the viability scale or viability stage, where we're assessing, does this even work? And we're quickly moving past that to say, okay, we think that it's going to work. So now how do we scale that across the entire Department of the Air Force? So that's one category. Software factories and the software ecosystem that is out there. You know, we have a number of agencies that have stood up the capability, rallying around coders to get after the business of technology advancements. And so what we're seeing is teaming that's taking place between industry with really a lot of coding expertise that the military has kind of stepped away from, but now joining those with operators that are very familiar with the command and control systems, the weapon systems that we are employing at DoD. And so how do you team together the operator and the coder to start thinking in new terms? We have been, you know, very popular in the Department of the Air Force of the work that we've done at a place called Kessel Run, thinking about our Air Operations Center. And we're really pushing out code in real time across the entire enterprise, pushing that code in real time. It's really exciting opportunity. We're also seeing a lot of integration, especially in the space side, with industry partners. So whether it's Starlink, whether it's SpaceX, whether it's others, there's a lot of collaboration. General Shea, at the beginning, you alluded to the nuclear enterprise and the way that they have come together. And I think that we're starting to see a lot of that work take place, especially on the space side, as we continue to think about the high domain and the evolution of standing up our Space Force and the work that Jay and his team are doing. So that's where I see a lot of the partnerships that are taking place right now.
General Fredenburgh, you're dealing with this challenge on a daily basis. What are some of the things that you do? I mean, this is your primary job. What are some things, what's some of the information sharing that goes on between, say, yourself and other leading industry providers of cybersecurity services in terms of keeping abreast of what the adversaries may be doing?
Yeah, thank you, sir. That is a critical aspect of what we do, and there's several ways in which we truly partner with the commercial sector in these areas. One of the ways we partner with them is really the commercial sector is really driving, innovation, right? It's not really necessarily being led by, the Department of Defense, but it's really this innovation is happening at a rapid pace in the private sector. Now we have some, I would say maybe some special or specific requirements that we drive, but the innovation is really happening in that sector. So we continually communicate, those capabilities and look for the innovation and ideas from the commercial sector, and it's a constant exchange, and it's proven very valuable. We haven't found yet, with all the capabilities out there, a lack of solutions. Really, what it boils down to is how to pick the best solution to implement at the size and scale and complexity of the Department of Defense information networks. That's one way that we continually have those conversations. The other way is, when you think about the special dependencies we have on the defense industrial base, and other critical capabilities, and folks that are partnering with us to develop capabilities, ensuring that there's a continuous exchange of information, activities, and intelligence to ensure that they have the insights as to what's happening, and how to better take actions or how to prioritize their security operations and defensive measures. And then making sure that we understand any implications that they find, on their networks, that we could, apply on our networks as well. So it's a full partnership that works both ways. And so those are probably two of the bigger aspects that we focus here at Joint Force Headquarters, Doug.
Are you comfortable that information sharing is in a timely manner?
Well, certainly we have to take every opportunity to speed that up. I will tell you, even with recent events, industry partners, I think there's still some hesitancy to come forward, come public with things, but certainly within the department, there is a mutual, I think, benefit to ensuring that our networks and systems are protected, especially the critical ones that we depend on for national security, or even from an economic, standpoint, or banking standpoint. I mean, we as a nation have a mutual incentive to protect ourselves against malicious cyber actors in any way, shape, or form, for the betterment of our common defense, if you will, and common prosperity.
Hey, General Shea, one thing in this area, there's a balancing is needed. Absolutely agree about how do we do the information sharing with our key partners. But I also think we're at a point in time where we really have to think about how much we share information about our capabilities, our tactics, techniques, and procedures, because that can be used at great disadvantage to us by certain entities. So this is, I think, a very interesting time, because the tremendous investments we put in, those investments can be countered, fairly easily with knowing more about our capabilities and our TTPs. And so this is, I think, is an important conversation we need to be having with our industry and academia partners in critical infrastructure, et cetera, about how do we share that really enables our not only national security, but national economic capability that is critical, but doesn't put us at risk. And I think this is a really important topic that is going to require discussion across the U.S. to really explore how do we do this and do it right and do that balance.
Okay, good point, Ron. Thank you. So,
Jay Matos. So again, from the Space Command perspective, again, we're driving the requirements, and one of General Dickinson's top priorities is the security, the cybersecurity of the network. So he has put that out there in formal language, identifying cybersecurity both to industry and throughout the Joint Force as a requirement. So now as capabilities are being offered up to the combatant command for operations, one of his key questions is, has cybersecurity been considered in this, and to what end, and how much? And really that falls upon my team to really lay that out for the boss to say, okay, we've worked with industry, we've identified it, here's the safeguards in place, not only from the building of and the design of it, but also with the Joint Force to say, okay, here's the capabilities that are built into it. I think one of the challenges is, again, just making sure that that industry understands that we demand and we expect that security will be baked in from the very beginning of the development of projects and capabilities, not as a bolt-on afterthought, but it from the outset. They are designing and developing those secure devices to the extent possible they can be, going well into the future. So that's laid out there. I think the other piece that is important to us is, our adversaries understand our reliance on the defense industrial base and the defense community that supports us. And they realize that is an avenue to get after our capabilities is through the defense industrial base. So ensuring that our peers and partners on the outside, on the industry side, are defending their networks and defending their capabilities from the prying eyes of our adversaries, who will definitely use those as avenues of approach to get to the capabilities that we have and potentially take them down. So again, you ask what's a big push from us is the industry continuing to use best cybersecurity practice to protect that information as they provide it to us. I think NSA has changed recently. I think everybody's seen that change recently with being much more open about some of the threats and vulnerabilities that are out there. I think in the past it had been we held those back, but I think General Nakasone and his team have been very aggressive lately about letting industry and others know the intelligence they've gathered about potential threats from our adversaries' cyber intentions and capabilities to come after us and to share that. So I think that's I think it's that will only increase going into the future. And I think that's going to be beneficial to everybody as that information on the threat is shared out there. And finally, to Chad's point, the Space ISAC. Fortunately, the cyber component of that is located out here at Colorado Springs. So we've been pretty heavily engaged with them to discuss, okay, what's industry doing, what's our requirement from here, and vice versa. It's the space industry wants to know what we're doing also to inform and defend our networks and their capabilities as well. So I think that's a burgeoning area where we will continue to take advantage of the ISAC to work with industry and to prove our capabilities in defense of it. Over.
So along those lines, Jay, and I'll direct this question to you. Where do the lines of authority and responsibility come together in relationship between government space and commercial space? How are the efforts coordinated in an operational environment?
Yeah, again, great point, great question, because there is a lot of, we are tremendously reliant upon the commercial space sector to support our capabilities. Obviously, the DoD has a wide range of capabilities up there in space, but we also rely upon the commercial sector to provide space capabilities to the not only to the Joint Force, but to other commercial entities, other countries, other capabilities. So that obviously General Dickinson as the commander has engagements with industry that he brings that up. But I think our key spot is where you look where that kind of engages at our combined Force Space Operations Center out at Vandenberg. The CSIS under Major General Burt of the Space Force and the Space Operations Command. At the CSPOC out there, that Space Operations Center, embedded inside it is a commercial integration cell where we have roughly a dozen commercial entities sitting on our op floor with Space Force members, with Joint Force members, as we run the day-to-day operations of that of the DoD constellations. We have our commercial partners inside with that, sitting with us. So as we see activity in space, whether it's space weather, whether it's adversary activity, whether it's something else, we can simply look over to our commercial partners sitting on the watch floor with us, let them know that a threat or an issue potentially exists, so they can take action. Obviously, we can't direct them. They own those satellites. They will do whatever they deem necessary to protect that. But that coordination certainly helps to share the free flow of information between what we're seeing and what they're seeing, but also what they may need to do to take actions to counter the threat that's out there. The authorities piece is one of the pieces we've been working is, what are the authorities General Dickinson has over to defend commercial space entities, commercial space objects that are up there? What authorities does he have to move that? And that's still being worked with the with the administration and OSD policy and others to really refine that. So in a time of crisis, General Dickinson would have some capabilities, some authorities over that, but that's still being worked at the OSD policy and senior leaders of the government, but also with industry. But really, to get right back down to it, I think that key point for us is that commercial integration cell, co-located and embedded with our Space Operations Center, where we are really able to generate a lot of synergy in the sharing of information and protecting of the assets going forward. And the authorities will again follow as everything matures going into the future. Over.
Thank you. Hey, Ron, I want to start this next question with you. I may come back to this question we have with Jay, but I'd like to throw this one out to you to start, and then you can all chime in on this. Are we unduly outsourcing jobs and skills that should be inherently governmental because we don't have the workforce? And then how does the government recruit and retain the necessary work? It's a question you hear everywhere you go. And I was on a call this morning that had the same topic that came up. And what are your thoughts on improving the training, readiness, and certification of the cyber force?
Okay, yeah, great question, because when it really gets down to it, a critical component of any capability is the people, right? And so let me first say there are things we absolutely need to be doing about leveraging industry, just like what Chad talked about. The Army is also doing our enterprise IT as a service series of pilots about looking at what can industry deliver the capability to us effectively and efficiently under our command and control about our DoDN operations. Because in so many ways, the way in which we do the pace of change of technology and the pace of ever increasing malicious cyber actors means that we need to move with much greater speed and agility. And the way we have both appropriations and contracting makes it very difficult to modernize our capabilities for DoDN operations. And so we are also absolutely, the Air Force is doing certain aspects of their pilots. We're doing different aspects. We're sharing information. We have liaisons between our program offices, and we are absolutely learning. And so before I get into the government piece of it, I just want to say there are clear capabilities that it makes complete sense for us to leverage the capability and that brings the speed and agility of what industry can bring in various things. As a service makes a lot of sense in many areas, but not everything. So you got to really think through what's inherently the governmental. But even with the capability that we're pursuing with ITAS, there needs to be the government oversight. Maybe the government workforce changes from the technician doing to be the making sure they're doing the right requirements and the interface with industry to make sure industry can be responsive and deliver that capability. And of course, it's as we really have, all learned over the last decade, I'll talk in Army Signal Corps terms. Signal Corps isn't just about making a capability available. It's about operating and defending. Those two things go hand in hand, and any initiative with industry has to be operate and defend as a service. You have to work your way through. Now, coming at the kind of the workforce, there is, especially on these higher skill areas, and I don't have great insight of how the U.S. Space Force is doing on its training and retention, but let me focus on the cyberspace operations forces, especially the high-end cyber mission force, which conducts the operational and defensive cyberspace operations, not only what the Army does, but across the joint force. Because a really good thing that the Department of Defense did in establishing the U.S. Cyber Command, but no matter what, the services have responsibility to do the man, train, and equip, but we deliver our military and civilian part of that workforce to joint standards, and they must be trained and certified to the same common joint standards. And so that is incredibly important. So as each of the services present those forces in the various kinds of combat mission teams, the national mission teams, national support teams, combat mission teams, combat support teams, and cyber protection teams of the 5 different flavors, they are all presented and trained to the same standards and are certified to the same standards. And I think that is incredibly important. Now, when you think about what it means to acquire, develop, employ, and retain, and that's the language we've adopted in the Army with our overall people strategy, and that's bigger than the cyber mission force. It is about what we're doing in the Army, and the Army has stood up an Army Talent Management Task Force looking at how do you really bring the service into the information age from the people point of view opposed from the industrial age. And that is further highlighted what we're doing with the cyber mission force. So as we look at, the Army stood up, Army Cyber Command has been 10 years old this past fall. But 5 years in, the Army was the first service to actually create a new branch, a new career field in the Army called Cyberspace Operations, where we have officers, warrant officers, non-commissioned officers, and enlisted who are enlisted in the Army or are commissioned in the Army to do cyberspace operations. Now, much of our lineage comes from the Army Signal Corps and the Army Military Intelligence Corps, and we've had a fair number of people from the space operations and fires area also are now our cyberspace operations. But when we look at the cyber mission force, the teams are about 80% military, 20% civilian, and so you have military and civilian working hand in hand together, and they must be trained, as I said, trained and certified to the same standard. On the military side, I think we're doing quite well on the acquire. There are lots and lots of individuals who want to enlist in the Army or be commissioned in the Army to do cyberspace operations. Where we're more, I'd say, more challenged is how do we, once we've got them trained, qualified, clearances, and they have 3, 4, 5 years of experience, how well are we doing on the retaining? And that's where we're putting a tremendous amount of emphasis in understanding what they want. And in surveys of this workforce, it's really interesting. They want to be adequately compensated, but compensation is not the number one thing to them. What's really interesting is mission is the number one thing. They want to be able to do the job they've been trained to do and do it without distractions. Additionally, they, by the very nature of what makes them skilled, they want to do continual professional and personal development. They want to continue expanding their technical knowledge, and they also would like to how we manage, instead of moving someone every 2 or 3 years, what we do normally in the military. We have 4 key locations where we have the cyberspace operations. So can we stabilize someone, especially if a spouse has got their own career and those sort of things? Those in some ways less tangible things beyond the compensation, those actually are the feedback that we're getting from the workforce. And when you really talk about talent management, you need to get to. On the civilian side, we are having more challenges on the choir, because there's just not as much knowledge that this is an opportunity in the Army that you could do. And my lights just went out in the room. Okay, now we come back on, but I'll keep talking. And it's a lead energy certified facility, so lights go off. But the really about this is more marketing, so we can let young men and women, whether they're in college and can do a summer internship with us, or recent graduates can do a 2-year fellowship with us, about how we make sure that bright young men and women know that there's opportunities in the Army to get at things. And then once we get them trained, certified in the clearance, and they've got a couple years under the belt, we're having the same challenges with the retention piece. So that's where we're really focused in many ways. How can we really retain these high-end individuals? There's also an aspect of how do we work across the other services and with the National Security Agency, so we don't have huge disparities in what we compensate people, so we're not necessarily poaching from one another. We want to be able to say, if someone moves, that's for a good operational or personal reason. It's not about poaching. And how do we raise everyone's boat across the DoD? Let me turn to my my other panelists, because I'm sure they have some ideas on this also.
I'd like to take a gander at this one here. I think I talked earlier about cyberspace being an operational domain. It's no longer just IT infrastructure anymore, and so I think that changes the way we should think about how we enter into those contracts and services that provide the IT capabilities. And a couple of my teammates here have brought up the enterprise IT as a service, and I think that's a great opportunity to achieve those efficiencies and speed that the private industry brings to us. I think what we need to look at is how do we incorporate what we're contracting out into an operational command framework, right? It's an operational cyber domain. And so how do we approach our contracts? How do we approach the oversight? And how do we approach the integration of these capabilities that are going to be contracted into this operational command framework? And then how do we assess and evaluate them maybe as we would a force that we train and ready, but more not so much individual skills, but some of those collective and even multi-echelon skill sets. In other words, how do their collective skills integrate into the operational command framework at the different cyber commands that Jay Matos mentioned. And from Chad's perspective, how do they integrate and report back to and take direction from Air Force Cyber, the command responsible in the Air Force to secure, operate, and defend their cyber domain? And so I think it's a different approach. Not that we shouldn't go there, but we have to always consider how we incorporate them into that operational command framework, and then how do we assess that their part or their contribution to that operational command framework.
I like to just throw one out, jump ball to anybody who wants to take it. We've got these certifications, standards, training standards, MOS, military occupation specialty standards, industry standards. The question I've got for you is, when we're talking about cybersecurity and standards, is the bar set too low? Are we tripping over the bar in terms of what our expectations should be? Or whereas we should be jumping over the bar because of the criticality of this in terms of what the standards are. In other words, are the standards set so low or set too low? And, you know, if they are too low, I suspect because that's probably what we can recruit to, or may have a part in that. Or are they set just right? So are we tripping over the bar in terms of where the standards are set and what the expectations are, and in terms of what the abilities and the abilities of the people that we're bringing in, or are they set too high, you know, as an alternative? But you know, what are your thoughts on that?
To begin with, I think you asked a very important question, and one that we are working daily. I thought Mr. Pontius did a great job of laying out what the Army is doing. The Air Force, Department of the Air Force is doing very much the same types of assessments. I think when you start assessing the types of capabilities that you have in the force, you have to think about the very high-end operators, and those high-end operators. The bar that industry sets on certifications is probably too low for what our nation and our Department of the Air Force really needs. And so in those cases, we need to get above the bar. In other cases, I think as we start building out what we're calling a digital foundation or a digital future or a digital force, we're recognizing that we really have what we're calling a digital readiness gap. We are no longer able to recruit, to retain, and to train the talent that we need. The recognition of, as we get into the future and the types of forces that we need, the baseline really becomes, how do we get everyone up to a certain digital standard? So that's where a lot of our work is going on right now. Similar to the Army, we have a digital talent task force that is out there trying to think about how do you get AI, ML experience on the maintenance side and with our operators? How do you build in an understanding on quantum from both our operational community, our maintainers, but also our cybersecurity experts? How do you build in automation into our intelligence forces? And so the recognition is that we really need to raise the bar for all of our airmen and guardians, for them all to have a foundation, at least in the digital infrastructure and the digital environment that we're looking for. And so in that case, I think the bar is perhaps just right. We've got to get everybody up to a standard, but our high-end operators will continue to be high-end, but we've got to get everybody else to at least a certain level to start having that conversation.
Okay. For General Matos, we touched on this a little while ago, Jay, but how do we better integrate commercial sector operations with government space and cyber operations?
Hey, can you repeat that question, sir? I didn't get all of it.
Okay, how do we better integrate commercial sector operations with government space and cyber operations, so that we're taking a holistic approach? If you look at what goes on in China and places like that, one of the things an autocracy can do is bring things together real quick and make them work, or try to make them work in a synergistic manner. In democracy, we tend to go in different directions and do our own thing as we see fit. How do we better bring the commercial sector and the government sector together, so that gap and those seams, we cut that down? I mean, this is all about speed and integration.
Again, great question, sir. I think one of the first challenges we would need to overcome is the classification challenges between industry and the government side. Obviously, I think overclassification has been mentioned by the vice chairman, by other senior leaders, as a challenge to successfully integrate between between what's behind the curtain and what's in front of the curtain, to share that. And sometimes again, being able to share the number one, the capabilities, the threat information, and the other, I think, is one of the biggest challenges we've got to overcome on that. And figuring out how do we, because again, you can't have that free flow of information, that free flow of discussion if you're not looking at you're not looking at the picture the same, from the same perspective and the same view, having that out there. And again, I think, again, working, how do we, that's a real good question. I don't know if I have a clear-cut answer on how to do that integration. Again, there are various organizations that we talked the ISAC, we've talked other opportunities out there to do that, but really it just comes down to sharing the information better, better between us to share, again, identify the requirements and then push them forward. Unsatisfying answer, I know, but again, a question that I think I got a little more thought to. Over.
Okay.
Hey, General Shea, I'll jump in and kind of mix your last two questions kind of together a little bit from an operational perspective when you talk about standards. We have seen in the Army, and I'm sure it's across the other services and the combatant commands, we have seen a real change in I would say, the operational culture, where it used to be just a couple of years ago, if there was some vulnerability discovered, the length of time to get it patched, and then there were big discussion about the balancing the risk of what that vulnerability was versus the risk of taking the system offline. And the way things have evolved especially over the last 18 months, when there's vulnerabilities, that is inherently bringing vulnerabilities to the greater enterprise. And the view is, if you didn't have the sufficient configuration or patching, then you need to be quarantined. And we are moving very quickly to do that from an operational perspective. Now, talk about kind of the standards and raise the bar with industry. We need to keep working with our industry partners about making sure that the systems that are delivered are secure, right? There is technology and processes now for verifiably secure systems being delivered. That is some of the standards we absolutely need to be working with the industry about their delivery, or other technology like homophobic encryption, where the things can be done on the system without revealing the encrypted data or the system configuration. Those are some technologies that we really need to be embracing, and I think in some ways that is raising the bar. But that's what we need to do, recognizing the pace of change of technology and the ever increasing threat that we have.
Okay, Chad.
If I can offer just an amplifying point as well, I think what we're seeing in our Department of the Air Force, and really DoD in general, networks are important, but what's perhaps more important in the age moving forward is rallying around the data itself. And so how do you build the right accesses that are required? And so there is significant effort from Cyber Command and all of the services right now to build out a future network that rallies around the data itself. And in those regards, we're all about building a zero trust environment. President Reagan used to say, trust but verify. The new mantra that we're beginning to think through is trust no one and validate continuously. So this is where a lot of our automation comes in, and our IT systems can come in. It can run those checks. And so as you're looking for the sharing of information, as you're working through the classification levels, a zero trust infrastructure and an environment is really what it's all about. Over.
Thank you, Chad. We're winding down here. What I'd like to do is, how about each of you think about what is one thing that you'd like to see from industry that would perhaps make a difference in your lives, make your lives a little bit easier? Just kind of a 1-minute response to that question from each of you. Ron?
I am really building upon what I just said a few moments ago, but I absolutely agree with Chad about where we're moving to with zero trust. And zero trust is not a thing. It really is a journey. It really is a foundational architecture. In industry, they're doing a lot of work helping the government think through that. And we need to continue partnering on that. And again, it's, as I said, it's not about specific products. It's about your overall architecture and approach to go at it. But things like talked about, like verifiable secure systems and the other encryption.
Shea?
Hey, thank you, sir. Again, appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I think the big, I mentioned this earlier, it's just we are so dependent upon industry to support us and to provide us those capabilities. It's defending their work, their intellectual property, their plans and whatnot from our adversaries. That's the biggest thing that can help us out going into the future. Industry's doing just a tremendous job providing capabilities. You've seen it with Starlink, you've seen it with others, where I think they're really going to help the United States, both from the commercial side, but also from the defense side. But we know our adversaries are going to come after that information. So protecting that to the best of their ability, I think, will benefit us tremendously as we go forward into the future, and making sure that we remain the most resilient, most secure, and most capable space nation in the world right now. Over.
Thank you. John Fredenburgh?
Hey, sir, thank you. A great discussion. I did the vector because I agree with my teammates here on this, and we have got the industry has to continue to innovate ahead of our adversaries. I mean, that is foundational and fundamental, kind of to our way of life here and freedoms and democracy that we all hold dear. But I would say that as we move forward, it's not going to be, yes, we want to continue to bake in security, but I don't think that's where we stop, right? We need to value the technology and capabilities that allow us not the zero tolerance, or the castle mentality of just protecting your perimeter, but getting after the data and the zero trust, and then value the ability to be proactive and then the ability to respond. So instead of thinking that, the adversary, we just can't let them in. Things are moving so fast in this domain that it is untenable to think that an adversary is not going to get, access at some point in time. But how do you minimize the impact of that access and then respond to expel that access or as immediately as possible? So it goes back to the resiliency and the whole spectrum of the proactive preventive measures to the maneuvering around to the responding to and getting back to normal state that I think we should value. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Chad?
Yeah, thanks, General Shea. And similar to what my other panelists indicated, I think this is really about making sure that our industry partners are taking cybersecurity seriously in the way that they execute their day-to-day business. We have seen the number of breaches that have taken place, not only inside DoD, but in industry space as well. The ability to quickly get there and respond is important. Also applaud the efforts. I call it the art of the possible. We need our industry partners to continue to be kind of the beacon on the hill, driving forward, showing us what is possible in the way that we do business. And then when we come together and we're talking about doing business together, it needs to be more than just about the tool or the strap-on technology that you can sell us. Really, it's about the relationship that we start interacting with. How do we integrate in your capability with what we currently have, and not make it a strap-on, but make it a fully integrated system to raise the level of our cybersecurity presence and responsiveness. And so that's what it's really about for us. So I'll just conclude by saying, General Shea and fellow panelists, this has been a wonderful opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. I've enjoyed the conversation, and as always, I've learned a lot from all of you. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, Chad. Let me just close this out by thanking these gentlemen. You're talking to four people that are on the front lines in so many different ways, defending the country, the nation, as well as their respective departments. You know, in the past, there's been a lot of pressure applied, maybe inadvertently, to preclude events like this from happening. I'm going to tell you, those barriers, and most of them are artificial barriers that have been placed in front of us to limit the discussion, need to be torn down. And you know, I come from a biased perspective on that, obviously, but I'll tell you, it doesn't need to be difficult. It shouldn't be difficult. You've seen these gentlemen out here willing to be very candid to the audience about their perspectives and their positions, dealing with some very important topics out here. So as everyone goes home, I would encourage you to make sure that the system works so that there is a free flow of information and discussion out there. If there are people who step outside the bounds of that free flow of information, then you hammer them. But don't put artificial barriers out there to keep these types of discussions from ongoing. So to you, Harry, first of all, I want to thank the teams that were behind you on this too, the folks that made this happen and created this, the work that they did in coordination. So please give them my thanks as we move forward. And again, Harry, thank you for inviting us to participate in this event. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Good chance to see a lot of people. I apologize for the camera problem. You were the winners on that, I assure you. So again, thank you very much.
Well, General Shea, this is Harry Raduege. Thank you very much for assembling this great team today. They really provided superb insights into the Department of Defense and the U.S. Space Force in all of the areas, frankly, that we're talking about with cyberspace and NetOps and beyond today. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks to each one of the panel members who I have known for years and continue to enjoy serving with on a daily basis. And I'll turn it back now to David and to Scott.
Hello, Harry. Thank you very much. Just want to say thank you to you, sir, for being the host of the event today. I want to thank Ensign and Brandon Green for their support, being the title sponsor of today's entire program. And really want to thank Lieutenant General Bob Shea for helping organize and put this together and moderating this very important discussion. And I want to thank the panelists in particular, because as General Shea said, these are people literally at the forefront of this very important frontier, and they are the ones keeping us safe, and they're actively involved in this day to day. They have very important duties, and they're taking time out of their very busy day and their very important work to share their insights with us, and we can't thank them enough. So I know you know all of them personally, and we'll all thank them afterwards, but a special shout out today. I want to say thank you to you and everyone else. Appreciate that.